I should correct myself that the president actually complained that Mr. Powell hasn't been a cheap money Fed chair. Tell us what exactly he said.
That's right. We've heard complaints before via Twitter and through his own economic advisors, Larry Kudlow and others, Pierre Navarro, that he does not like the rate hike path that Jerome Powell has put the U.S. on. But now these remarks behind closed doors to a group of Republican fundraisers become a little bit more personal, the nature of the criticisms toward the Fed. And what he told donors was that he had expected Jay Powell to be a cheap money guy, someone who would want to keep rates low. And this is coming against the backdrop of expectation that next month Powell will raise rates, and the Fed has itself projected another 2 rates for the rest of this year.
Of course, we should know that Mr. Powell was President Trump's pick instead of Janet Yellen, who could have led the Fed again. Tell us who were present at that fundraising.
There were a lot of billionaires, CEOs that were there, members of the administration, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, and Trump's own Chief of Staff John Kelly was also attending. It was in the Hamptons over the weekend.
Saleha, I'm not going to ask you to get inside the president's mind and tell us what he really meant, but let's talk about the 3 possible groups he could be talking to. The people who were there, these are people who would probably like to hear, they'd like cheap money, as it were. The Fed itself, Jay Powell and his colleagues, and then finally the voters that maybe would be voting for President Trump, or if not President Trump, his candidates. How will those 3 people react?
You know, the voters is probably the one I can comment on the most. Voters will prefer cheap money because that means mortgage interest rates will remain low. Small businesses will have more access to capital. And that is sort of the combination that will help grow the economy, especially with some tax cuts coming toward individuals and consumers. As far as businesses, it depends which business you're in. Most businesses, especially in like the steel and aluminum industries, manufacturing, they of course prefer low rates. What's interesting is that we are seeing almost a coordinated effort coming from Trump himself and some of his advisors and other loyalists who worked for the campaign and have been vocal supporters of the campaign are now, every time the Fed makes a decision, if they're hinting at higher rates or they do raise rates, you see more tweets and comments out there.